So thank you both for joining. Yeah, today we're basically talking about some ways to change what happens to someone after they sign a petition, as well as ways to promote petitions and ways to track activity once they land on the site. So the plan is basically to talk about the different post-action flows that are available on the platform. So what someone sees right after they take action, both the different options that are available, how to set them up, and then how to customize some of them, as well as some tips for ones that you might be interested in using. And then we're going to talk about UTM source parameters and how those all work and how you can use them to track where activity is coming through on the platform, as well as how that interacts with some other things that you might be interested in doing. And then we'll have time for questions like during this, afterwards, and that can be on the stuff we're talking about, or it can be on whatever things happen to be in your mind on ControlShift. So I'm going to share my screen and yeah, I just wanted to start initially with some of the sort of supporter views and what that looks like for someone who's taking action on the platform. So many of you, most of you are probably already familiar with sort of the default, what happens after someone signs a petition. So generally speaking, if you haven't done any sort of special customizations, when someone signs a campaign, they'll be immediately just prompted to share the campaign on social media. So they enter their information, click to sign. All they see is the social share. You can customize what's in the social share. So if you haven't already, you can add things like WhatsApp, which is not as popular in the US as it is outside of the US. You can add that. You can also add Facebook Messenger. You can also reorder these buttons. So if you find that, WhatsApp is your highest sharing channel and you want it at the very top, you can bump it up to the top, and that's all available in your settings. But this ask someone to share on social media is sort of the default for most organizations, where when someone signs a random petition, they're asked to share, and that's sort of all that will happen. However, we do allow you to customize what actually happens. For other petitions, you can set up new rules to have new things happen when someone takes action. And the full list of what's available, you can see in this effort, which I will also send over so that you can sort of play with these in person if you'd like to. The idea is that you can set up different things saying, when someone signs this individual campaign or all campaigns, I want them to potentially be redirected, or shown a welcome message, or shown a promoted petition, or shown an iFrame, or shown an event, or shown a local group. And you can really choose what the actual experience is for someone. So for most of these, they're fairly self-explanatory. I am going to show you a few of them that I think are probably most useful for NROs and for like specific instances or specific types of organizing that you might be wanting to do. One that I'm not going to spend too much time on, but that is somewhat popular, is the share then redirect option. So generally, this would not be a platform-wide override. This would be like an individual petition override. And it can be something where someone signs a petition and then you immediately send them to another page within ControlShift or to an external site to take some additional action. So we're not going to really talk through that one very much, but just know that that is also available. So I want to talk through what this looks like for supporters first, and then we'll talk through how to actually set these up and how to customize them and how to make them sort of work for whatever you're hoping to do in your organizing. And let me just try to find a place for all of the Zoom windows to go that aren't covering everything I need to be able to see. So the first one I want to start with is actually this one, share then iFrame. So this is one that is popular for people who are interested in accepting donations on the platform. The idea here is that for those of you who have known ControlShift for a while, we used to have a donations tool called Take Charge, which we ended up sunsetting in like 2018 because it was really difficult to make it work correctly for every single country in the right currencies and in the right methods of making donations. And so we no longer have a built-in donations tool within the platform, but we basically allow organizations to connect with whatever tool they're currently using. And most organizations connect via the share then iFrame option. So you can see that after signing, I immediately get the share that you're all, I'm sure, familiar with at this point. And then when I skip this step, we load an iFrame here. So this is a test example with a tool called Raisely, which is based out of Australia. And they basically allow you to create donation pages for whatever things you're interested in. We use Razely in our testing because it's pretty simple to set up and it works well. You can basically set this up with whatever donation tool you're currently using, as long as it is able to exist in an iFrame. So if I were going through this as an actual supporter who's making a donation, I can go through, I can enter my info. Don't actually remember how far it lets me go with my obviously fake info here, but here we go. So I can then enter, payment details and then make that donation. The idea being that I've made the donation without ever leaving the ControlShift site. So when I'm done making that donation, I'm still on ControlShift. I can still take additional actions afterwards, but you've asked for a donation in the meantime. One organization that does this is called Campax. They're based in Switzerland, and they have this set up in, I think, a kind of useful way that I'm hoping will work when I reload the page. So they're using a different donation tool for their donations, but what's nice about the way they set this up is that it auto pre-fills what I just signed my petition with. So they've set this up so that the details from the signature gets auto-populated into the donation form using URL parameters. And I can then sort of more quickly create my donation without having to re-enter the details from my signature. So I'm going to show you how to set that up if you want to use donations and you want to use that sort of auto pre-filling. We'll go through how to actually create that, but I did want to show you the supporter side first. So that's the iFrame. You could use this iFrame option for something that's not donations. I will say that donations is the primary way that people use the iFrame options. If there's something else that you wanted to include in an iFrame, you could potentially do that too. But like I said, donations is generally the way people use this. So that's one. The other one I wanted to mention quickly is this effort, share, and then search. And so this is one that is probably not as commonly used, but I did want to mention it just because Greenpeace does so many efforts across all the different NROs. So the idea with this search, let's just go through it. So I'm going to sign this petition. When I sign, I'm immediately asked to search for my campaign. So I can then basically enter my location to say, what is the local effort petition that's near me? Yeah, go ahead, Anastasia. Okay, so I did want to mention, like I said, the effort one. This is one that I'm not going to spend a lot of time on. It's not super commonly used, but I did want to mention it because Greenpeace does so many effort campaigns. So the idea here is that after someone signs a petition, they're then immediately asked to search for their location to find the closest campaign to them. You might be wondering, but they've just signed a campaign. Why would they then search for the closest campaign to them? I was really hoping that my zip code would work. Let's try a different zip code. This one has like fewer campaigns than most of our efforts. There we go. So the idea here and where this might be useful, some organizations set up effort campaigns where they start with sort of, please sign our big national petition. We just want as many signatures on that big national petition first. And then we're also going to ask you to take action on your individual local campaign. So it's sort of a two-step ask where the most important thing is the big national petition, which maybe the organization is then going to divide by postcode later on, but they want sort of that big total on a single campaign. And then they also want people to either start or lead the local version of that national campaign. So if you have that sort of excuse me, if you have that sort of effort set up or that sort of idea for a campaign, this is where that post-action flow can come in useful. So you can ask, if you imagine that this is the big national campaign that we want everyone to sign first, you can have them go through and sign this petition, then immediately be prompted to find their closest, individual local campaign. Or we have a version of this effort post-action where you can then prompt them to start their own local campaign. So if you're in the process of spinning a campaign that maybe you hadn't initially envisioned as an effort campaign that sort of went viral, and now you're thinking, wait, this was a single petition, maybe we should actually spin this into an effort with a bunch of local targets, you could do something where you immediately then prompt them to create their own local version. Go ahead, Elodie.
And if you do that, will we have, as administrators, will we have to first create local petitions? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So there's sort of two options here. If you do create local petitions, it will make it easier for people to see campaigns near them. If you don't create local petitions, we'll then automatically prompt them to create one near them. So you don't have to. You can if you want to. If you are spinning something from a big national campaign into an effort, and you definitely want to target, these 10 cities, you could pre-create petitions for them to make it a little bit easier for someone to take action. But as long as you have recruitment enabled for the campaign, we'll then prompt them to create a petition if there isn't one near them. So yeah, either way. Like I said, this is really only useful if you are setting up a post-action flow for a petition in an effort, but I think it can be helpful for that use case of we have this big campaign, we then want people to take local action as well, or we have this big campaign and we're trying to make it into an effort type of campaign with a lot of local individual targets. And the other thing to know is that you can customize, oh, I'm in the wrong tab. You can sort of customize what the prompt here says. So you can make this really specific to whatever effort you're running so that people know exactly why they should actually, enter their zip code and do a search. Any questions on that? Okay, so the last one I wanted to show you for now is one that's very popular. So we started with iFrames, which I think are sort of a medium level of popularity for people, especially who want to do donations. Efforts, less popular. It only really works with effort campaigns. So if you're not doing an effort campaign, it's not going to be useful. These two, welcome and promoted petitions, extremely popular. Lots of organizations use them. And if you're not currently using them, it's something that you may want to use. Technically, this is a sort of a combined after action. So you can have share then welcome, share then promote a petition, or share welcome promote a petition. I chose the one with all three because it makes it a little bit faster to show you. You can split these out if you only want to do one of these. So the idea here is that I go to sign this campaign. I'm asked to share on social media as usual. At this point, you can send me a welcome message. So helpfully, like a little bit ago, Elodie mentioned, you can set up a daisy chain that's different for new users. This can be super useful for new users, showing them a welcome message that explains, hey, Green Voice or Vitaris or Abugio, we're part of Greenpeace. We're a thing that's happening via Greenpeace, your NRO. Here's how you can get more involved in the work we're doing. And you can customize what all of these different texts are. You can add images, it's HTML enabled, so you can really format this however you want to format it. At this point, you can then set up, I should say the buttons here are automatically set up. So people are then prompted to start their own campaign, make a donation, or find more campaigns. So even if you decide that you don't want to set this up as like a default flow for everyone who takes action on the platform, if you see a campaign that's bringing in a lot of new users and you're a little bit worried that they may not completely know everything that you're doing on the ControlShift side or as an NRO outside of ControlShift, it might be worthwhile to set up a welcome message on that campaign so that people know what's going on. JM asks what this will look like on mobile. It'll resize down. So we'll automatically bring it down to the size of the screen that they're viewing on. And again, the idea here is to sort of give an overview of the activity that's happening on the platform, make sure people are aware of what's going on, and then also prompt them to take additional action. So whether that's creating a campaign, making a donation, or seeing more campaigns, sort of get them involved in the next steps for your organization. So I think this can be really helpful, especially for new users. Let's say that I feel very welcomed. It's all great, and I'm ready to move on to the next step. This is where I can see a promoted petition. So these are petitions that admins have said, we want people who have taken action on some campaign to then see other campaigns that we think are really important, that we think are going to make people want to take action. And we'll basically give a small preview of what that campaign is. So this looks a little bit weird because the image has like fog in the background, but the idea is that we'll show the image, the title of the campaign, its current signature count, and then a selection of the Y text. This has very short Y text, but we'll sort of give them some information about what the campaign is and why they might want to sign it. The campaigns that you promote are, like I said, admin chosen, so you can choose exactly which campaigns would ever show up in this promoted modal. We will try to match based on category selections. If you're using categories, we'll try to say, you just signed a freshwater campaign. We're going to try and show you another freshwater campaign if there's one that's being promoted. We also only show campaigns that this user has not previously signed. So if I had previously signed this campaign, using the email address I just used, I wouldn't see this campaign in my promoted petitions. Elodie asks how we do that. I think that's the question around the matching by category, and it's based on what category selections were chosen for that campaign. So when someone is setting up categories, they usually choose the categories that their petition is a part of if you have categories enabled on the platform. And then we'll just try to match however many, like what petition in the promoted petitions list has the most categories in common with the petition they just signed. The other thing to know that we'll talk about in a little bit is that you can also promote campaigns locally. So you can have a set of campaigns that you're interested in having anyone across the country potentially sign. And then you can have campaigns that are maybe targeting a local decision maker that you only want people from very close to that city to sign. So you can set that up so that basically we look based on the postcode that someone has entered, say, this is where you are on a map, and we're going to show you the campaigns that are happening near you, but not show them to someone on the other side of the country. And so again, the idea is to sort of make this easy. If I click to sign this campaign, it'll immediately bring me to the campaign. It'll fill in my details from my previous signature, so I can click to sign with one sign. And then because we're going to talk about sources and buckets and UTM parameters, if you look up in here, you can see that my sources are being updated to say that I'm coming from a promoted petition. So you can sort of track the, how much of the activity for these campaigns is coming because you've promoted after someone previously signed a different petition. Henrique asks, the welcome message appears after the first signature of a user that created an account only, or will it appear for not logged in users as well? It depends on how you set it up. So it can appear to everyone who takes action, or it can appear only to people who are taking their first action. So if someone has an account on the platform, they usually would not be counted as a brand new user. But if someone is adding a signature and they've never done anything else on ControlShift, you can set it up so that they get welcome to the platform. Any questions on promoted petitions?
If you want, it's just sharing of experience.
Yeah.
I implemented those promoted petition post-action things like 2 or 3 months ago, and I set this post-action promoted petition action for petitions that I promote in my monthly newsletter. And it has a huge effect. It's crazy. It's like we have around 10 or 20% of the signatures that are from the promoted petition action flow. So it's huge. I didn't think that it would be this high. So yeah, I think it's a very good function.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, I think it's something that can be really useful. Also, I mean, Elodie might disagree, but I think it's pretty simple to set it up. Like, it doesn't take a lot to add a list of promoted petitions. And if you have this set up as sort of a default flow, you can just like continually pop people from a promoted petition to another promoted petition. Like, it will sort of continue as long as they have any promoted petitions they have not yet signed. So, if it's easy to set up and it continues to make them take additional action and also get a better feel for what you're doing on the site, I think that can be really helpful. So we talked about what these look like from supporters. Now let's talk about like how you actually set them up so that they can appear on your platform. So the first thing to do is to log into your ControlShift platform, go to your admin view, and then down to settings. This is under post-action flow. And from here, this is where you set up global rules for your platform. So all of you have global rules already, even if you've never customized them. We provide certain default global rules, and these affect all petitions on the platform. So adding any rule here will affect anyone who meets those criteria. So you can see the ones that we have here already. We have, if there's any sort of custom behavior, then we use the custom behavior. If the petition is moderated to suppressed, no special actions. We sort of move down through this list. And the idea is right after someone takes action, in the background, we're going, is number 1 true? No. Is number 2 true? No. Is number 3 true? And we keep going until we find the thing that is true for them. So let's say that you decided you wanted to promote petitions on the platform as a general rule. I'm going to get rid of that one because that's basically the one I'm going to recreate. You would click new post action flow rule, and then you have a certain set of criteria that you can use. So for something like a promoted petition, normally what you would do would be base it on the petition's moderation status. Since we don't really care if someone is new, whether or not they're going to see a promoted petition, we probably want both new and returning users to see promoted petitions. Whether or not the petition has an event or a local chapter doesn't matter either. Mostly what matters is probably the moderation status. So you would click to choose that, click go, and then you can choose the moderation statuses for which you want to show a promoted petition. So maybe for us, we want unreviewed, approved, good, or awesome. Effectively, any campaigns that someone is going to sign, we want them to see a promoted petition. Maybe you only actually want it to be shown for ones that you've already taken a look at or ones that you've already like highly approved of. You can decide based on what you want this flow to be, how you want to set this up. I'm going to do it for sort of broadly, pretty much everyone sees a promoted petition. At that point, you then choose, I'm hoping that you can see this. Sometimes the like drop downs are not visible. So hopefully you're seeing a drop down right now. But basically you can choose which rule you want to create. So in this case, we're talking about promoted petitions. We're going to choose the share then promoted petition option. Then I click save, and then automatically adds my new rule to this list of rules. At the moment, it is near to the end. So in reality, the people are going to see this. We have to get through all of these conditions being false before anyone is going to see a promoted petition, which based on the rules we have set up, effectively no one is going to see a promoted petition currently. They're going to see one of these other rules. So when you're adding this new rule, if you want it to be something that most people see, you can just move it to the top of the list. And you can sort of slot in your new rule wherever you think it should appear. So that's sort of all you have to do. At this point, we'll update for everyone. The custom post-action behavior is a rule that you cannot remove. So any petitions where you had overridden their behavior to be something else would be unchanged. But any campaigns that are using like the default global platform-wide set of rules would automatically use this new rule that you've set up. JM asked if there's a limit to the number of rules. There is not. There is, however, kind of a limit in that you can only base it on 4 things, and then there's a limited number of daisy chains that you can actually set up to have happen afterwards. If you did want to add a different rule for every moderation status or something like that, you could technically add a different rule for everyone, and there wouldn't be an issue there. The other one that we sort of talked about is whether the member is new. Again, if you wanted someone who has never taken action on your ControlShift platform to see a certain behavior, you could choose whether the member is new to ControlShift, and then potentially choose share, then welcome, then promoted petition, and make that to be a new rule that you're going to welcome new members. If I were setting this up for an actual live platform, I would then make this the third rule. So So suppress petitions still don't have any special actions because that's something that most organizations want to be the case. Then we're looking, is this person new? If so, they're going to see a welcome message and a promoted petition. If they're not new and the petition is unreviewed, approved, good, or awesome, they're just going to see a promoted petition. And then we have these other items down below. In reality, if I were actually creating this, in the way that you potentially might be for your platform, I would actually probably put this below the local group and event. Generally speaking, if a petition has an event, organizations generally want the event to be promoted before promoting other random unrelated petitions. So I would potentially, slot in the the promoted petition message, after events and local groups promotion. But it's up to you. You can decide how this is set up whenever you'd like to. You can also remove rules. So if for some reason you decide that you no longer want to use a rule, you can click to remove it. You can also reorder these at any time. And I've mostly focused on petitions for that because that's what most of you are doing. Technically, events have the same sorts of rules. So you can set up what happens after someone RSVPs to an event, make different rules for that. There are fewer choices for events, but there are also daisy chains for them as well. Any questions on that? No. Okay, so that's global rules that are shared across the platform for any petitions without special behavior. For petitions with special behavior, let's say you have an individual campaign that you want to show a welcome message on. Maybe you're getting a lot of new signers onto this petition that's gone viral, and you want to make sure that they know what's happening on the platform and sort of get a feel for what the work that you're doing is. Basically, you would go to the petition. My internet feels like it has slowed down, so I'm not sure if that's also causing lag for all of you, but hopefully everything's good. Okay, good. So you would go to the petition, click admin, go to settings, and then after signing. This is where you can say, for this individual petition, ignore all of the rules that I've just set up in the platform-wide settings and do something special that I'm choosing here. So again, you'll see the list of options here. Maybe for this one, we do want to just show a welcome message, or maybe we want to ask for a donation with all of the variables here. Or this is also where you could set up a redirect. So maybe after someone signs this campaign, they should immediately go to our turtles toolkit about how to save sea turtles. And so we're going to send them off-site to, my NRO's main site where we have that toolkit available, and we want to just immediately send them there. You can basically set these up, however you want to make sure that you're getting the behavior you want for your signers. Anything that includes a URL, so whether that's a redirect or an iFrame, will include the option to add these parameters, which can be useful for sort of tracking who has landed on our turtle toolkit. Is it people who have signed? Is it people who haven't signed? Let me track the sources or track the petition they're coming from and make sure that I understand what's going on there. And then as Elodie pointed out previously, there's also a section where I can say, this all is going to happen for returning users, but for new users who are newly taking action on any ControlShift petition and who happen to be signing this petition in particular, let me do something else for them. So for example, if you decided to make a donation page only on this petition, perhaps for new signers, you show them the welcome message instead without asking them to make a donation immediately. And these can be updated at any time. You can make changes if you have a campaign where maybe initially you want to welcome people and then you do want signers to be redirected later on. You can update this so that the behavior changes halfway through the life of the campaign if you want to. Any questions on that? Okay, one warning that I do want to mention, because it has caused issues in the past, is that in the post-action flow, there's the option to redirect and share then redirect. You're welcome to use any of these. The share basically will show the social share first before sending people off-site. The redirect will just immediately send people off-site right after they take action. The warning here is that there's also a redirect petition to URL at the top of the section in petition page. This has nothing to do with post-action flows. It will just immediately mean that the moment someone tries to view this petition, they're automatically sent to whatever URL you've added here. It's not the same thing. If you get stuck, you yourselves won't actually be able to view the petition page either. You'll have to get the URL for the petition page, add org in between it here to sort of bypass the redirect and get to the admin view, and then remove the redirect petition URL. So just a warning that it says redirect in both places, but it does very different things. Usually you probably don't want to use this one except in very limited circumstances. If you do want to set up a redirect after someone signs, make sure you're in the after signing section, because people have gotten stuck before. All right, any questions there? Somehow the time has run out, or very close. So let me do a couple of quick things to mention, and then we'll wrap up. I mentioned the welcome message. I mentioned that you can customize it. You can do that by going to settings, content, petitions. And then if you look for welcome, there's text for the welcome modal, and there's the title for the welcome modal. So this is where you can customize what someone sees in their welcome modal. I mentioned that it's HTML enabled, so you can make it however you want to make it look. For petitions, to promote them, basically you would go to the petition page itself, click admin, scroll down into campaign status. If you have not yet done promotions, it will look like this. And then you can just click this toggle to say promote this. So that's all it takes to add a promoted petition. If you also want to promote it locally, you can do that. That basically means that only someone who's using a postcode within 10 kilometers of the location of this petition is going to see this in their promoted petitions flow. So we just look, are there any campaigns within 10 kilometers? If so, they'll see that promoted petition. Otherwise, people outside of that radius will not. And these promoted petitions then get also all listed in settings, promoted petitions. So you can see the ones that you've previously promoted. You can make them global, make them local if you didn't already, and you can remove them if you've decided like this campaign is no longer one we're interested in promoting. You can just take them down and sort of choose what you're promoting at any time, Go ahead, Elodie.
Just to clarify, so if you take the local option, it will overwrite the petition showing up for the national, the country. Is that correct? So
yeah,
if you want to show it to everyone, don't click the local.
That's correct. Yep.
Okay.
And if you accidentally click local and you mean that it actually should be global, you can just click to make global and we'll just switch it over and change the setting. So you're not stuck once you've added it. Yeah, we wanted to talk a little bit about the way that you can track activity on the site. So generally speaking, there's sort of two big ways to do that. There are built-in sources and buckets, which we'll talk through, and then there are UTM parameters. You're probably familiar with UTM parameters already, since they're a more sort of like broadly used, accepted way of tracking source activity or where someone is coming from. They usually are used in various like marketing type emails. So you might already be using them with the emails that you're sending to your supporters. The idea is basically to say, this person landed on the page, they signed a petition, how did they actually get there? So within the platform, we do some of this automatically. So for example, on this petition, let's say that I've just signed it and I'm going to share on Twitter, choosing Twitter because they do a better preview of the URL than Facebook does. You can see that the URL that I'm sharing is not just the URL of the petition, but that we as ControlShift automatically add in some source parameter and UTM parameters. So this is one way that presumably many of your signatures are already being tracked via social media. Because this is a demo site, our number of source parametered signatures is very low, since they're almost entirely just me signing petitions at various times, and I don't usually add source parameters for myself. But your graph hopefully is a lot less gray and has more information about where your sources are coming from. So even if you've never set your own source parameters, you will still see this information almost assuredly, and it'll include various social media networks because we add these in automatically. The two that you see up here are the ControlShift specific sources and buckets versus the UTM parameters. So they're the bit here where it just says source equals Twitter share button versus the UTM source, which is a different parameter. You can, however, use both. And the signatures, if you do an export of signers, that will also include all of the UTM parameters as well. So on the row that has this, I was hoping to say the name of the person, but that is not pronounceable. If you use this one here in the CSV, it'll have different rows or different columns for UTM campaign, UTM content, blah, blah, blah. So you can track individually who came from what specific source. You can also get sort of total numbers from a CSV export if you wanted to. All of this is also included in webhooks, which goes into Cosmos and then goes to other places. So if you're trying to deal with the data in sort of a big picture way, that might be a way to use it, is via Cosmos. So the nice thing about this is that you can also customize what people see, or like what UTM parameters or tracking parameters you're using when you're sending like a blast email asking people to sign a campaign. So you can set this up by just typing in what you want to use. So let's say we wanted the source to be blast email. We want to maybe also have a bucket parameter of, I don't know, I'm not creative enough to actually think through things. And then we also want to add some UTM parameters. So again, the UTM parameters are standardized across the internet. A lot of different tools use them. Most emails I feel like that are sent from organizations or from companies usually include these sort of source tracking parameters in them. So you've almost certainly either used them or been tracked by them in the past. And there are different ways that people recommend you use them. For our purposes, since we don't do anything special with the UTM parameters, really, you can sort of use them in whatever ways make the most sense for your purposes. I'm also realizing that my ability to type, think of what the fake parameter is going to be, and talk is like not as good as I thought it was. So sorry about that sort of winding sentence and very slow typing. I can't do multitasks apparently. But as you can see here, let me actually just do this. So if this is something where you've sent me this parameter where there's a lot of different things that I'm being tracked as, when I go to take action, oh man. Also the thing about like typing on camera just makes it so much worse. I don't know why. Oh, it's embarrassing. Okay, so once I've signed, I can then, as an admin, you'd be able to see all of that information in my signature. So it has, you know, the source code, the bucket, all of the UTM stuff. We do have a help document that explains sort of how people recommend you use the UTM parameters. So if you're not really sure when you would want to use one versus the other, this is generally the way that people recommend using them in sort of marketing ways. The one thing to know is that the UTM campaign and the bucket act in the same sort of special way. So UTM sources, these other UTM terms generally go away after the signature is added and then get replaced with potentially new information. So for the petition I just signed, where my source code was blast email and my UTM source was 456. If I then go to share it on Twitter, you'll see that those source codes, in theory, you would have seen that those source codes go away. I'm not logged in on anything here. It's not going to let me. The source codes would go away. They'd be replaced with Twitter share button or email share. So when I go to share this on social media, the next person's would be tagged with the source of where I shared it versus being tagged with blast email because they didn't receive the email. They came to the platform via Twitter. Buckets, which is the control shift term, UTM campaigns are a little bit different in that they sort of stick through all of the different generations of people signing. So if someone, let's say you send an email with a link to a petition that has a bucket parameter, so bucket equals blast email, 5 of your initial recipients sign the petition, they get tagged with the bucket parameter that you've set up, 1 of them then shares on Twitter, and 6 more people sign based on that Twitter share. Your total bucket would be 11 because we tracked it through the first generation where there was 5 shares, the second generation where there were 6, and we'll continue keeping that bucket or that UTM campaign parameter in the URL throughout every single share option that happens, all the signatures, it continues to remain in the URL. So that can be useful for tracking sort of the broader outcomes of the different campaigns that you're doing. So the different things on social media, the different emails that you're sending, really tracking through what is the full range of signatures that are coming from us sending that initial email that then sort of gets shared with very many other people and goes through social networks and then comes back to petitions and being able to track that information. That was a very fast attempt to explain what is normally something that takes longer to explain. Did that make sense in any way, or do you have a lot of questions on sort of anything?
Just to clarify, even without the customization in the UTM, the tool automatically detects where they come from, right? Like if they sign an ad from Facebook, it will show in the graph earlier.
So we will automatically, we don't necessarily track where they're coming from unless that parameter has been added. So without doing any customizations at all, we will automatically add Twitter share button sources and UTM parameters for someone who's clicking like the Twitter share button on the petition page. They then share on their Twitter timeline and then someone clicks it and then signs. We would tag that signer with Twitter. If someone just shared this part of the URL though, like just without any sort of tracking codes at the end, we wouldn't necessarily know that they came from Twitter. So they wouldn't be tagged as Twitter unless those sharing codes are.
How will it show in the graph earlier, like the sources of the signature?
Yeah, so if it's a control shift source or bucket, which is the one that we actually show the graph of, let me actually go here because I think this one has the most petitions, most signatures, even though it's not very many that have been sourced. So you can see that if you click the source, the little circle that hopefully is more colorful for real people, it'll show you the full count of sort of where those sources are coming from. So in this case, 2 people fake came from a Twitter share button, 1 person was uploaded, there was 1 WhatsApp share button signature, 1 person from Offstein's blast email, which is definitely fake. And so you can sort of see the high level numbers by just clicking into this source code. If you download signatures by clicking over here, the CSV will include all of that information too. So you can.
Yeah, so is it the no source? Because I saw there's a lot.
Yeah, so in this case, because there are no tracking, for the most part, when people are signing, especially on our demo site, there are no tracking parameters. So they would all be added to the source.
All right, thank you.
Absolutely. Any other questions?